friend. You're listening to The Sustainable Body Worker, the podcast for massage therapists who want to grow thriving, purpose-led businesses without the burnout. Here we talk about nervous system aligned business strategy, pricing that makes sense, client work that doesn't deplete you, and how to build a career that actually supports your life. I'm your host, Gretchen Popp, massage therapist, mentor, educator, and recovering overachiever. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to the Sustainable Body Worker podcast. I'm so glad you're here. I'll be honest, after recording today's episode, I couldn't help but picture myself curled up in a cozy armchair on a rainy afternoon somewhere in England with a hot cup of tea with Nicolle. That is the energy Nicolle brings, and I truly hope that someday we can make that image a reality. She's just one of those people. Before we get into it, I want to share a quick update from inside the Sustainable Body Worker membership. We just wrapped our 90-day roadmap workshop, and I have to say the feedback I got from practitioners afterward made me genuinely emotional. I am strongly considering making this an annual offering because of how much it landed. If you missed it, don't worry, but do take note for next time. We do have monthly classes every single month, but this one was especially special. Coming up next month inside the membership, we are doing something a little different for our monthly CE webinar. As many of you know, I've been working toward completing my 500-hour yoga teacher training, and to celebrate that milestone, we're doing something immersive this month. Think movement, yoga, self-care, all woven together in a really beautiful experiential CE session. It's going to be unlike anything we've done before, and I really don't want you to miss it. If you've been thinking about joining the membership, now is a great time. The link is in the show notes. Also, as always, if this episode resonates with you, please share it. Leave us a comment wherever you're listening. Every share helps us reach more practitioners who need this conversation, and I am just so delighted and grateful to be seeing this podcast grow every single day. Now, today's guest, Nicolle Mitchell, is a holistic massage practitioner based in Cornwall, England, and she does something that not many practitioners specialize in, which is working with clients living with dementia. This conversation is about so much more than one specialty, though. It's about what it means to hold space for clients who are often overlooked. It's about consent when words start to fail. It's about building a practice with genuine attunement and real boundaries. And it is absolutely a permission slip to approach your work and your own well-being with more tenderness and clarity. I look forward to more conversations with Nicolle in the future, but for now, let's get into this one. Alrighty, Nicolle, I'm so happy you are here, and I just want to really share my appreciation for the fact that we've been able to connect, that we're able to have this conversation today. And I've been looking forward to this ever since we met. And I just want to, before we get into it, give everyone an opportunity to hear a little bit more about you, your background, and what you offer. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to our listeners today.
Okay, so I'm Nicolle Mitchell, and I'm a holistic massage practitioner, and I work in Cornwall, which is almost as southwest as you can get in England, in the UK. I have a general practice where everyone is welcome in my clinic, but I specialise in treating people who live with dementia, and I take a special interest in combining that with understanding people and from where they've come from, if they've ever been through trauma or if they're experiencing trauma at the moment. And yeah, how that all interconnects. I'm really interested in the intersection between dementia and trauma, and the two often go hand in hand. I also provide the first training program of its sort within the UK on how to massage people who live with dementia. So there's like a 1-day course where everyone's welcome, a 2-day course, which is really for practitioners only and is really about going much deeper. And then I've got my aromatherapy for persons living with dementia, which is just for aromatherapy practitioners, basically, to really deepen and understand how they can use essential oils to improve the health and well-being of people living with dementia. So, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I love that. And I love that you have the aromatherapy aspect, because I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before. My first shoe into kind of the spa-y and herbal side of the massage therapy world was an aromatherapy class. And I at first thought that aromatherapy was just like, ugh, okay. I honestly only took it because there was no space in the orthopedic class that I wanted to take instead. So I had to fill that elective credit with something else. And I kind of rolled my eyes. I guess I'll take aromatherapy. But then in class, I was completely blown away at how profound it is, and I'm sure you can agree, it's an incredibly powerful tool. I love that you have that adjacent to your practice with dementia.
I mean, yeah, and I would encourage practitioners who are serious about specializing in this field to actually go and get qualified in aromatherapy, because there was a review done in 2020 by, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Zhao, Gu, and Zhang, if I'm remembering rightly. And they talk about how massage, when it's mixed with music, when it's mixed with aromatherapy, just has this most magical effect, and particularly the aromatherapy and the massage. So it, and I was reading today as well in one of my professional associations sort of magazines, how there's a very small pilot study just been done on 7 people within a residential setting, and how they were using, I think it was lemon for breakfast, bergamot after lunch, and lavender after dinner. And they were just finding that people's appetite and well-being was just so much better just by diffusing these oils into the atmosphere. So yeah,
Amazing.
I know. And there are so many. I mean, there's another study that came out last year about rose increasing the grey matter in the brain. So everybody I tell saying, give me a bucket of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, rose is incredible. And we've been using that one for thousands of years.
I know, and it just seems to be like the older women know. They know intuitively, don't they? So
Yeah,
it's good to have these studies coming through underpinning, like you say, the eons of knowledge and wisdom that have been passed down to people.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Now, give me a little story about how you got into massage for dementia.
Okay, so I blame mum usually.
We all do, right?
Yeah, right. You should know she worked in a nursing home getting on for about 20 years ago. And she would see firsthand how people living with dementia were affected. And she felt that some of them were really isolated, and some of them didn't have visitors to go in and see them. And she just felt there was a real disconnect. So she harassed the manager at the time and said, "Come on, get my daughter in. I think she could really help make a difference." And sure enough, I was invited in, and she said, "Okay, well, if you come in for a day a week, I'll think about the people who would benefit most from your interaction, and we'll see where we go from there." And I knew nothing. I mean, I'd had 1 or 2 people in my general practice come to see me who lived with dementia before that, but yeah, I really knew nothing. So I was diving in the deep end. So I decided, right, okay, I need to go and pop myself on a course, don't I? And of course, there are oncology courses, there are courses for older people, there's pregnancy massage, but there was nothing in this field. So I started reading around really voraciously. And when I was first working in this particular nursing home, I was given 3 pieces of A4 information, and it was all about reality orientation. I don't know if you're aware of this particular technique, but to summarize, it's about bringing a person kicking and screaming into your reality, your present. And I just felt that by doing that, and I did do it for a while because I didn't know any better. But what I was doing is I was putting my clients into a place of ill-being, distress, and I thought there's got to be a better way. So I kept reading, I kept sort of like, looking out for people who worked in this field for inspirations. And as I was kind of pulling all this together and finding new ways to interact that were more compassionate and more empathic, I thought, well, if I'm doing all this reading and there's no course like this in the UK, then why don't I start to pull together a course? So it took me nearly 2 years, because I'd never done this sort of thing before. But I worked with my professional association, the FHT, And they were just really brilliant. And they said, okay, Nicolle, what you need to do is really brush up on your permission section or the legislation or what have you. And I was like, oh, yes, you're absolutely right. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So I'd go away and, whir away at developing that part of the course. And then I think it was 2011 was when it was ready. And I think the sort of concept was 2 years before. And then in 2012, I got an award for innovation. And then I would say, last year I also was a finalist for innovation for the aromatherapy as well. Didn't win didn't clinch the top prize, but I'm just really excited again to have the recognition, that this is innovative work, and yeah, it just feels great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so not just innovative, but impactful.
Mm.
Really, anyone who has had family or loved ones impacted by dementia knows how incredibly important it is for there to be a loving, empathetic care team involved in their care. And it makes me think when people hear massage for dementia, they might kind of imagine it as a one way act of care, especially considering how far and what stage of dementia the patient might be experiencing. How do you reframe this work as a relational exchange rather than something being done to someone?
Well, it's just about the very way that I work and that I encourage others to work. So, massage for dementia, that's really about the algorithms. That's not about the person. But everything I do is, it's not just about being person centered, it's actually about being led by the person. Because you often hear people saying, oh, they've got no capacity.
Yeah.
And I just go, for what? And then they go, well, you'll see, nothing. And actually, I think that even though under the UK's Mental Capacity Act, a person might not be able to make decisions about certain things, we can still enable a person to have consent. We can still create a space where a person feels safe enough to genuinely converse with you in the way that suits them. And it really is about attuning ourselves so that we can pick up on all those subtleties. So whether that's tone, whether that's the breath, whether that's, a facial expression or the way they move to or from you or away from you. So yeah, everything that I do is absolutely about the relational stuff, because without the relationship, there's no safety. And without safety, there's no consent.
Yeah.
Hey friend, real quick, I'm interrupting this episode to share something that's made a huge difference in my health and my ability to actually rest, which is kind of the foundation for everything we talk about here. Now, you've heard my story, and you probably know that I used to be a chronic insomniac. Like, my eyes were super tired, brain totally wired, body aching all the time, just laying there for hours wide awake, even though I was completely exhausted. And even when I did fall asleep, I'd wake up with that classic cortisol spike at 3 a.m. and couldn't fall back to sleep again. I honestly just thought that was how my body worked. But everything changed when I started using Swanwick blue light blocking glasses. I was in a program that emphasized 3 pillars of health, and sleep was one of those non-negotiables. And once I understood what blue light was doing to my nervous system and circadian rhythm, it made so much sense. So here's the science real quick. Blue light, especially from screens and overhead lighting, suppresses melatonin production. And it doesn't take much. Even small amounts of exposure after sunset can delay the release of melatonin by hours, making it so much harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. But that's just the beginning. That same disruption also affects your cortisol rhythm, your ability to regulate inflammation, your blood sugar, your digestion, and even your tissue repair. Now, you're a body worker, so you know sleep is when the real healing happens for you and your clients. So now I wear my Swanwick glasses every night starting at around 5 p.m., especially if I'm leading a Zoom call or working late, and the difference is wild. I fall asleep within 30 minutes of starting to read in bed, I sleep so much deeper, and I wake up with a lot less pain. And most importantly, I feel like me again. And just to take it a step further, I even swapped my bathroom light bulbs to their amber-toned bulbs so that my evening routine doesn't confuse my body into thinking it's midday. This is one of the easiest, most effective upgrades I've made to my nervous system regulation and overall healing. It's super low effort, high reward. Honestly, it kind of feels like cheating. So if you're someone who struggles with winding down or you find yourself wired at night even though you're bone tired, give these a try. There's a link in the show notes to grab your own pair. Okay, back to the episode.
And, you mentioned the consent, and that's so important in this conversation because consent does look so different in dementia care. And I am curious about the specifics of how you might be able to teach practitioners how to recognize and honor consent when that verbal communication might not necessarily be available.
And of course, that depends on the individual client or
Yeah.
patient. And I kind of have a two-prong approach when, I'm working with my colleagues. And one is about the actual process. And again, that always starts with the person that we're offering our services to. And then you might go through, right, okay, so I've approached them. They may or may not be able to understand, but at least I've started with them. And then it might be that you speak to the next of kin or that you speak to someone who holds power of attorney, which is kind of legal guardianship. If you, it might be that you need to speak with their healthcare professionals who support them. It might be that they have some support workers or carers involved, whether they be professional carers, family, friends, advocates, etc. So working with everybody as well as the person being absolutely the center of all this, can take a while to get the consent in the first place. So we go through that, what that might look like. And then we take it sort of like to another level where, well, what if they're not even going to understand anything that you're saying, particularly, that might not mean very much to them? It's about being there in the moment and paying attention to all those signs. So we look at the signs of comfort and we look at the signs of distress. And again, that's going to be very different depending on how that person is in that moment. And that can change from moment to moment.
Yeah.
But we break it down. And once you start to break it down, what it might look like, that sort of like helps put the foundations in for practitioners to feel more confident about, okay, so I've got to pay particular attention to the breath, or I'm just going to do a check-in because I'm not quite sure what that facial expression meant. And I've got an example of a lovely lady, and I'll call her Rita. And there was one time I went in, and of course I check in at the nurse's station, and I say, how's Rita? Any changes in her health, her medication, her presentation? Oh no, no changes. Okay, brilliant. So anyway, I go down and I treat her, and I'm setting the tone for her treatment. And I think it was some little way into her treatment, she started doing this,
Hmm.
shaking the head. And I thought, oh, that might be a no. So I stopped and I checked in, but she carried on doing it even after I stopped. So I just said, okay, Rita, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and check in with the nurse and make sure everything's okay with you, because there might be something I need to know, and covered her all up and made her feel all comfortable and safe again. Went and had a chat with the nurse and they said, oh, yeah, meant to say she started doing that, in the past week. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to treat Rita anymore today because I need to go away and think about that. And they were like, okay. So I went away and I had a chat with a colleague and she said, well, it might be a sign of pain. So it might be that you need to call for a medical review. And I said, oh,
Mhm.
I haven't thought of that. So again, this is something else that I can now pass on to other people. It could be a pain thing. And the other thing that she said, but she said she might also be looking for the breast. She might be looking for the reassurance that she would associate with her mother.
Interesting. Yeah, that reflex.
Absolutely. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to think about how I can explore that. So I went back in the next week, set the tone as usual. And once again, Rita started doing this. So I just started singing Hush Little Baby. And slowly she stopped. She slowed down. She stopped. And then I sang another lullaby to her. And she just softened. She was settled. I did lots of, work on her face, which is very sort of like reminiscent of the mother's touch. And you can also do other. This is Naomi Files' work from the validation therapy that she offered. And that there's father's touch, which is reassuring and about safety, and there are other sort of forms of touch as well, which are about meeting a need. So it's just really important that we always exercise that curiosity
Yeah.
and that we do the check-ins, because that can then lead to a better connection, whereby Rita is going to maybe accept that what's going to follow this week is going to feel as good as it did the last time she was treated this way.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love how your curiosity led you there.
Well, thank you. I think, well, it's, I think to be human is to be curious, or if not, maybe it's not gonna help with your empathy or your attunement. And I know that some, I've had to work on those skills. I think they are teachable and learnable skills. But yeah, that I think if you're really into the work that you do and you're really into the well-being of humans, then I think the curiosity just follows.
I agree, absolutely. Now, I can't help but wonder who typically is the one who calls to hire you?
Gosh, who typically calls to hire me? It really varies. I mean, like, do you mean as in who calls to hire me for my hands-on services, my massage services, as opposed to the educational part?
Well, I mean, I can't imagine someone with a case of dementia saying, unless they're, just newly diagnosed and just with the early onset of symptoms, making the conscious choice to receive that specific type of massage care. Is it usually like one of their care providers or a part of their team or their family that instigates this type of care? And I'm also curious too, what is usually the intended goal? Is it because this person typically has chronic pain, or it's to settle them in a different, more specific way related to what they're experiencing with dementia?
Okay, so the short answer to that is so very different depending on the person who I'm going to offer my services to. And, I can think of so many different examples. There's one chap I see tomorrow, that's his wife, who basically asked for the service. And then she passed that on to the activities person where he lives. And she actually found out about me through another therapist or person who used to do therapy in this area that I taught years ago. And they came back to me. So that's one example. Another example is I attend events in and around Cornwall. So I go to, and Devon as well, which is the next county up. So there's a lovely conference in March that I'll be going to in Devon. There's also a dementia conference in May that I go to. And I also connect with the Admiral nurses who are under the umbrella of a charity called Dementia UK. And within Cornwall, they provide these wonderful events. And that's twofold. So the first event is a care and share event where professionals get together and talk about the services that they offer within Cornwall, or about the studies that they're doing, because you sometimes get academics coming in and talking about the research that they're doing, which is amazing. We've got such talent in Cornwall. We're very lucky. And that's a really great opportunity to connect. And, they hear about your services, and then they might have someone in mind that they say, would you mind, if I introduce you to blah, blah, blah family? And then the second events that they do are actually the carers events. And I haven't been able to get on one yet, but I'm going this coming Friday, and I'm really excited about it because I'll see the carers. And sometimes, it might be that I'm introduced to the people living with dementia themselves. Going to the second part of your question, which is, who can ask? Well, absolutely, people living with dementia can
Yeah.
ask for this themselves. So yeah, it tends to be very, very different each time. And I find that people knowing about the service that I offer within the area that I offer it really helps. So networking is a big part of what I do. And it's also just really good to, one, gain the expertise and understanding from people who have the lived experience, but two, also to connect with carers and professionals who get the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, not to mention inspiring, keeping you a part of the growing wealth of knowledge and innovation around care
Mm.
for dementia as well.
Oh yeah, just when I think like, oh yeah, I've got this nailed, No, there's somebody else who comes up with another wonderful idea and just helps you deepen your knowledge even further and just think like, oh gosh, yeah, why didn't I think of that before? So absolutely. I mean, I follow Professor David Sheard's work, and he was saying last year in a conference that he's been doing this work for 30 years about, connecting with people who live with dementia and improving dementia care. But he's saying, really, in 30 years, apart from the odd shining example, not an awful lot has changed. So, yeah, but I think we still need to keep inspiring each other to keep motivated, to challenge our own practice, to encourage self reflection, to encourage organizational reflection and culture change. And then beyond that, the systemic change and reflection that we need, because one can often hamper the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can all support each other so much too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's part of why we're having this conversation too, is so that we can network in that way and expand this message. And I remember when we were speaking previously, boundaries are a really big piece of dementia care and something that is, I remember you mentioning, very important to you. And I'd love to know which boundaries are often the most misunderstood or kind of crossed in dementia care and how that might impact both the client and the practitioner over time.
So I gave this some thought, and I think it's consent. I think it absolutely comes back to consent. And I think one of the I mean, there would be that this is a very sort of like complex area, but I think one of the biggest things that it comes down to is time. And one of my colleagues, when I used to work in the NHS, used to say if she could prescribe anything for any of her patients, no matter what their life limiting illnesses might be, it would be time to spend with that person to help with their support in whatever way they needed it. And I think when we don't spend the time, we breach consent. And that might look like, so I'm going to take this beyond bodywork practitioners
Okay.
because this is what I witness. I sometimes witness people having intimate care without the context, taking the time to create that context of safety first, and then that person's in distress. And similarly, if someone's being moved into a more comfortable position because they've got to be turned regularly because of pressure sores, you can hear them in distress. Now, obviously, sometimes there's no helping, there's no getting away from it. That is going to be uncomfortable for the person. But when I remember one time I worked with some carers, and this particular gentleman, he was going to have to leave his own home where he was living with his loves and go into a nursing home. It was like last chance. So I went and observed, and I said, I'm not here to shame, I'm not here to guilt trip anybody. I'm just here to see if there's anything we can tweak, anything we can add into the magic to make it work. And it was little things like queuing him in. I'll I'll call him Richard. So it's queuing someone in right at the beginning instead of, oh, hi, I'm here to do your personal care, Richard. Richard's only just queued in at the end of that sentence. Hi, Richard. It's
Mm.
me, Nicole. I'm here to help you get clean and comfortable. And then and instead of talking over Richard, like I observed, involve Richard in the conversation. Make sure he's included, because if he's included, he's not going to feel like he's ostracized or he doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And things like not using cold wet wipes. Who consents to cold wet wipes? Why not warm the flannel up in lovely warm water first? I
Yeah.
would consent to that to get clean and comfortable. So there are things like this. They take time, but it worked. He ended up spending the last 3 months of his life at home amongst his loves rather than going into nursing care. And they
Amazing. That's huge.
but it's massive, and so it takes it beyond the realms of massage into how we treat a person with dignity. We were giving Richard back his autonomy. We were we we were also, the carers were no longer battling him because and he would go, "I'm British," and who says that unless they're in fight mode?
Yeah.
Fight, flight, freeze, all examples of us going into survival mode. And that's where he was. As an ex-military man, that
Mhm.
was him saying, I'm being invaded.
Yep.
And he went from that to, well, they just said, thank you so much. It really worked. And it's the little things of treating a person with dignity that make the biggest difference, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, that applies to just working with people
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know that moment when you realize you can't keep doing this alone? When every client cancellation throws off your entire day? When you're answering texts at 9 p.m., you're doing the laundry and the bookkeeping and the social media and the actual body work, and you're watching your life pass by from the treatment room? Maybe you've thought about hiring help. Maybe you've even looked into it or hired someone who didn't work out. But then the questions and troubles flooded in. How do I afford to pay someone when I'm barely paying myself? What if I hire the wrong person? What if I can't find anyone good? What if it makes everything more stressful instead of less? I get it. I've been there. And here's what I want you to know. The practitioners inside the Sustainable Body Worker membership had those exact same fears. They were stretched impossibly thin, doing every single task in their business alone, terrified of what hiring might cost them in money, in time, in mistakes. And now they have teams that run smoothly while they work fewer hours. They're taking real vacations without their business falling apart. They've built practices where they show up as the practitioner, not the laundry service, not the receptionist, not the marketing department. They're leading teams that expand and inspire this profession, and they're doing it without burning themselves out. One of my members was drowning in the day to day tasks of running her practice. She knew she needed help, but had no idea where to start. Inside the membership, she learned how to hire her first employee the right way, how to find the right fit, how to train them, how to structure their role so it actually freed her up instead of creating more work for her. Now she has time to focus on the parts of her business she actually loves. She's no longer answering every text, doing every load of laundry, managing every single detail. She built a team that supports her vision, and her business is thriving because of it. Another member came in feeling completely overwhelmed, managing chronic illness while trying to keep her practice afloat. She was terrified of hiring because she didn't think she could afford it. But once she implemented the systems we teach, she brought on support and it completely transformed her life. She's no longer sacrificing her health for her business. She has a team she trusts, and she finally has the space to breathe. Now, here's the thing, these members didn't have extra money sitting around when they started, they didn't have it all figured out. They had the same fears, the same doubts, the same packed schedules you probably have right now. What changed wasn't their circumstances, it was the support they received. Inside the Sustainable Body Worker membership, you get step by step training on how to hire your first employee the right way, from writing the job post to onboarding to creating systems that actually work and what to actually pay them. You get monthly coaching calls where you can ask questions in real time and get personalized guidance. You get a hypnotherapy library to rewire the limiting beliefs that keep you stuck because I can't afford help and I have to do it all myself are just stories your nervous system is telling you to keep you safe, and they keep you stuck. And you get a community full of body workers who are building teams, sharing what's working, and cheering you on when it feels hard. So if you're ready to stop doing everything alone, if you're ready to build a business that doesn't require you to sacrifice your body, your time, or your sanity, if you're ready to step into leadership and create a practice that actually supports your life, head to the link in the show notes and use the code SBCPOD to get a special discount just for podcast listeners. Because you don't need to keep white knuckling your way through this. You don't need to wait until you're, quote, making enough money. You just need someone who's done this, who's built a team, managed employees, and created systems that work to show you exactly how. I'll see you inside. Yeah, that's amazing. And it seems like so much of what you do, I mean, obviously there's the massage work, there's the hands-on massage that you are doing, but there's such a big container being held
Mhm.
during this time with them. And I believe that that container is really what sets this apart versus the hands-on techniques. How would you say the hands-on techniques shift, if at all?
Well, they do shift. I think you become, again, I feel I became more present and And I know, in fact, one of my colleagues, she wrote something here, so I'll read it to you. She said, "The specialization brings clarity. The focus shifts from doing to creating," which is what I liked. And you're creating with, because you're in a feedback loop, a relational
Yes.
feedback loop. Creating safety, comfort, and connection takes time. Each session always asking something from me, never the same session for any one person. I'm clear about my role, my responsibility, and most importantly, of working ethically with vulnerable people. Now, those aren't my words. That's Stephanie Hills, who is amazing. And she's just really passionate again about doing this right and the work she does. And she feels that it's not about the massage technique. And I don't teach a routine, I teach a repertoire so that people can go and weave it into their own unique styles, because you've got that relationship with that person that's with you right there and then.
Yeah.
And it is about listening, with the whole of your being. So I talk about listening with your head, your heart, your hands, and your conscience.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love the mention of not a routine, but a repertoire. I really
Mm.
like that because it really is like it is so interpersonal. It's not just personal. It's not just how we provide our skills. It's how we are weaving our skills with each individual body that we're working with. So it really is like a new experience every single time.
It is, and I do one of the things that I encourage practitioners to do is to let go, actually, of some of the stuff that we were taught,
Yeah.
to be practitioners. Always keep your hands on, never lose contact. Nah, rubbish.
I agree.
It's how you go with the flow and creating that space and making it feel natural, because, you know, when we're sat with someone that we're close with on the sofa, even, we're not going to have to make sure we never lose physical connection.
Yeah.
There's natural dance between you, isn't there, that goes on where you're constantly connecting, interconnecting, disconnecting, and then reconnecting again. And it just feels so natural. And the deeper a relationship becomes, the more natural and unconscious that becomes. And that's when you know that you're getting the attunement.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I completely agree. And there's another one as well. Why not do one-handed massage? Because actually, if I'm getting a burn on because I'm trying so hard to do a two-handed massage and someone's in the middle of their bed and I'm getting a real burn in my back, actually
Mm,
that's not going to work, and I'm going to transfer that stuff.
exactly.
No.
Yes.
So I think, well, either support myself on their bed and do one-handed massage and go with the flow, or I might, use that hand as my anchor hand to create a boundary, saying, "This is as far as I'm going to go today." So
Mhm.
again, go back to boundaries,
Yeah.
and that's a solid boundary, and that might move during the massage as well, up, down, around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of boundaries, let's talk more about boundaries because, like, really, you are working at the intersection of deep compassion and very clear limits. So, how do these strong boundaries actually protect practitioners from burnout? I mean, you mentioned that example there, which is a beautiful way of protecting oneself from burnout.
Yeah.
But particularly with this emotionally charged kind of work.
Well, I think you have to know what your limits are.
Mm,
And sometimes that's about doing the work, I think. And I think, Gretchen, from some of the stuff that you've shared over time, is that you discover what your limits are. But I think going in with a kind of a healthy approach. So I tend to be very limited when people can contact me. I generally tend to be office hours Monday to Friday, unless I'm training at a weekend or doing an event, or unless I've made an appointment like we have, that might be outside my normal hours.
yeah.
And that's fine because, I've agreed that, and and you've agreed that, and, we've set that between us. So I tend to be quite good about that. Sometimes I find I'm sort of like blurring the boundaries, and then I think, right, okay, I need to reel those back in. I'm only human.
Just like any human. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. So there's that. But I also think, again, with regards to the emotional burnout, I think having really clear policies, So whether that be having complaint policies, whether that be having terms and conditions of your contract or the guidelines that within which you work written down and signed by either the client and or somebody who supports them is really helpful. Because if you're not constantly thinking, "Oh gosh, they didn't give me enough notice and now what am I gonna do? Am I gonna charge them or not?" Then actually, if you've got that written down clearly and people know, then you don't have to waste emotional energy
Agreed.
on that. So it's having that. It's also about having good, clear record keeping. So, and what your care plan is and managing expectations. Are you happy with me making up essential oil preparations for this person? Are you happy if I make recommendations? Or do you just want me to float in and float out after I've done a massage and we'll leave it there? So people have very different expectations and it's good to kind of nail that down.
I think that's actually incredible advice for anyone working with human bodies is
Mm.
having and creating the space for that type of a conversation. If not in the first session, then definitely in every subsequent session. I was having a conversation previously where with Nathan Nordstrom where he's talking about every single time mention, what are you expecting from today? Because their first session with you or 3 times ago or whatever could be totally different than what they are really needing today. And I remember with a particular client, he had just experienced his mother going through a heart attack. And that was a very stressful experience for him. And I actually made the assumption he was used to me just really laying into him with my elbow. He's this big dude that worked out quite a bit. He just needed all the elbows and all the cups and, go big or go home. And I made the assumption that because he came in so stressed and so upset, that he needed just more of a Swedish massage, more of a relaxing massage and holding space. And I actually aggravated him more because I made
We've
that
all done it,
assumption.
haven't we?
Yeah. And he really came in, hoping to just be beaten up again. And so, even though I thought that I was doing the right thing, not having the conversation about what those expectations are actually ended up doing both of us a disservice. And I think that we sometimes kind of either we don't have the time in the facility that we're at, we haven't carved out the time to be able to hold those conversations with our clients, or we haven't just made it a part of our pattern to ask a simple question like, what's different today than maybe previous sessions? What would you like that might be different than previous sessions? Or if you'd like the same as usual, cool, then great.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a lengthy conversation, but I think that that is one thing I believe to be missing in general in this profession is the amount of time that we really give for letting the client land and attuning to one another before getting hands on.
Definitely. And actually, it was during COVID in my general practice, as much as, within in fact, the community work did drop off during COVID. But during, my general practice, I ended up adding an extra 15 minutes to every consultation because, one, you had all the extra cross infection stuff. And two, the gravity of what people were bringing in and also the gravity of what I was dealing with because we're all going through it.
Yep.
So I had to allow time for us to be gentle with each other and check in. And I thought, oh, after COVID, that I'll squeeze that back down to an hour. But I couldn't do that now. I really couldn't.
It's a privilege to be able to and it really accentuates the level at which we're able to hold space for each other. And yeah, it just creates a different approach. And also, it's interesting with my clinic I had for all new clients, they had a full half hour of intake. I had that room and it really made a big difference for just kind of setting the stage differently from what their presuppositions might be from their previous experiences of massage. And yeah, I mean, you think that with the transition of COVID, going back to previous amount of time. No, it's truly a game changer being able to connect on that level.
It doesn't. And like you say, it's about people coming into land, isn't it? And one of the things that, again, I encourage anybody who attends my course to do is allow, again, going back to that time, because it takes time to create a context of safety. You then need to do your treatment if they consent, but then there's also the tacking down time, as I call it. because how you leave a space is just as important as how you enter a space. You know, it's a bit like you won't shoo someone out the door in your clinic. I won't shoo out the door and just leave them sort of like, I have a gentle routine, and that's slightly different, or quite possibly very different with each client. How I speak, my goodbyes might be very different. I mean, there was one lady that I used to, kiss and goodbye, because her whole family were very comfortable about that. Again, I would consent, and I say, could I have a kiss goodbye? And she'd do that, or she'd. So again, doing things on her terms, and that was lovely. But I wouldn't do that with everybody, because, there was one lady who said, "No, I want him to save all his kisses for me. Thank you, Nicolle." Okay.
I love that. And is it kinda, I feel like it brings you in as, like, a part of the family too. If it's a family ritual, it makes in that context, it makes that sense of safety and security and familiarity, so that receiving care from you is all the more well received, I feel like.
Absolutely, and I love it when members of the family, when they really work with you, and they really take on board some of the things that you suggest. But I'm also listening, because they're making suggestions, and with this lady, I just said, what I love most is that, even though towards the end she lost so much of her verbal ability, she still always spoke the language of love. I mean, the most common words I heard from her were, "I love you, lovely, 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 and thank you." And I think, again, that goes back to how we are in a space, not talking over a person, talking to a person or with a person, and peppering that space with the language of love. And I think just as much, we we can do that, or we can choose the language of being dismissive.
Yeah.
You don't matter. But we bring it back to, you matter.
I love that so much. That's so heartwarming.
Oh, you look like you're filling up, Gretchen.
It's so sweet.
You know that moment at the end of a session when you're completely drained, when your body feels like it's given everything and you just need something to help you reset? Or maybe it's the end of a long day when you're finally out of the treatment room, but your nervous system is still wired, your muscles are still tight, and you can't quite come down from all that output. I've been there, and for years I've tried everything: stretching, foam rolling, Epsom salt baths, heat packs, all helpful, but nothing really gave me that deep grounding reset I was craving. And then I found the Bond Charge PEMF mat. PEMF stands for Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy. And I know that sounds intense, but stay with me. Basically, it uses the same natural electromagnetic frequencies found in nature, like the Earth's 7.8 Hertz Schumann resonance, to help your body recalibrate at the cellular level. The mat I use is the PEMF Mat Max, and it's honestly become one of the most valuable tools in my self care toolkit. I'm on it every single day. And here's what makes it so incredible: it combines PEMF therapy with infrared heat, red light therapy, and semi precious gemstones like tourmaline, amethyst, and onyx, all layered together to create this deeply restorative experience. You can choose different frequency settings depending on what you need. There's a delta wave setting for deep sleep, an alpha wave setting for calm and relaxation, a beta wave setting for focus and energy, and a grounding setting that mimics the Earth's natural frequency. And the heat is not just surface level heat. It's far infrared, which penetrates deep into your muscles and tissues. It's like the warmth you feel from the sun, but concentrated and therapeutic, kind of like an infrared sauna without all the sweat. I use mine in two main ways. One, after I'm done with clients for the day, I lie on it for 20 minutes with the delta wave setting. It helps my nervous system shift out of work mode and into rest mode. I sleep so much better on the nights that I use it. And two, I actually use it on my massage table as a heated pad for my clients. The gentle warmth and PEMP frequencies add an extra layer of relaxation and recovery to their sessions. Clients have told me they've never felt anything like it, and honestly, it sets my work apart. And here's the thing: this isn't just for body workers. If you're someone who struggles with sleep, stress, muscle tension, or just feeling depleted at the end of the day, this mat can be a total game changer. It's low EMF, flicker free, and completely non invasive. You just lie on it, choose your setting, and let it work. No pills, no appointments, just 20 minutes of deep restorative support for your body and nervous system. So if you've been looking for a way to actually recover, not just survive, head to the link in the show notes and use the code SUSTAINABLE at checkout for 15% off your order. That code again is SUSTAINABLE. Just for our Sustainable Body Worker podcast listeners, you get 15% off. Your body works really hard for you and your clients. This is one of the best ways I've found to give back to it. All right, back to the episode.
And it really, this has been something that's been really important to me as well. All humans are worthy of respect. And yeah, I got kind of fired up about this in regard to how children are treated. As though they don't understand. And it's actually funny. They understand far more at, 1.5 even than we give them credit for. And I feel like it's kind of a similar thing that, someone going through dementia, their family might be in a place of avoidance of, accepting what's a really challenging reality to face. And there's so much distance and progress that can be made when coming from a place of love. So I love that you shared that story. That's absolutely beautiful. And I'm curious if for body workers who are feeling called to working with this population or, more interested in learning more, but possibly are concerned or worry about the emotional weight of this, what skills or supports make this work sustainable rather than depleting?
So limit the amount of clients that you have in this particular. I mean, I have my general practice and I have my specialist practice out in the community, and I limit the number of patients, and I might not be able to take on more clients, and I might not be able to take on any more because yes, I mean, it's really moving work. It's richly rewarding. I wouldn't want to be doing any other specialism, but I also do feel the weight of it sometimes. And that's about looking after myself. So we've already talked about sort of like how I boundary work, but I recharge, I make sure I get a massage each month. I am still so shocked at the number of therapists who don't get a massage regularly.
Even once a month is too infrequent for us. We need once a week at least.
Well, maybe that's what I need to aspire to. So yeah, but some people they might need something else. So you might need talking therapy, or you might need mentorship or supervision or some sort of consultant within your field. So I think it's about seeking out, your tribe or practitioners who are going to support you through. Because if you think about this being relational stuff, actually some of the work that I've done within myself has been about checking in with my own relational dynamics. And that's been really eye opening, and helped me sort of like look at what my needs are and also think about how I am and how I might need to change things to not fall into unhealthy sort of dynamics. I've also found there's a model, you may have come across it. It's called PACE, and it was by Dan Hughes, yeah? So I use that as a really good framework as well to navigate relationships more healthily, not just within sort of like my personal life, but within, my professional life as well. And, yeah, so there's the playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And then some people call it place and put love in there as well, don't they?
Yep.
I think sort of like working within those frameworks and, being open to curiosity within yourself as to where your work life is important.
You said something so important, and I really want to highlight it because not enough practitioners prioritize this, and it is looking at their own needs and really taking the time to facilitate the discovery of that, whatever method that is, and like honing the art of getting those needs met, because so many of us come from a place of wanting to fill other people's cups and keep everybody else afloat. And really, for a lot of us, I don't know if it's generational or if it's cultural or if it's gender based, but so many of us really only feel that we are worthy or of value when we are serving other people, particularly. And it can be really, really hard to even think about what our needs are first, let alone fulfilling those needs and getting them met. So I'd love to know more about your process on that, if you wouldn't mind sharing that, because I think hearing other practitioners that honor that in themselves and have curated that process for themselves will be inspiring for those of us who struggle to meet our own needs first.
Okay, so meeting my own needs first. Not saying yes to everything that I'm offered. Saying no is okay, and I'm quite empowering as well. So that's one thing I've learned over the years. The other things that I do as well is, and again, this is what I think is normal stuff, but I walk, or I've got a lovely little piece of land with my partner in Cornwall where we're nurturing a food forest, a permaculture food forest.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
So do we. And that's where I do mindfulness in motion, I suppose. I, you know, because there's a rhythm to walking, there's a rhythm to digging, or there's a rhythm to weeding that
Yep.
you get into, that you can just get lost in it. And that's where I process stuff. So it's taking time to reflect. However it works for you, it's it's taking the time to reflect. And things just float in and out of my head, and that's where I also get inspired. Do you know what I mean? For, oh, I haven't thought of that before. Oh, okay. Or maybe I could do this next time with blah, blah, blah. So it's building in the reflection time, however it works for you. Some people do the gym. Some people, do mindfulness and meditation. It might come through therapy, but as well as, my regular massage, that's what really, really works for me.
I love that that's nature based and garden based for you. I get my biggest ahas in the garden as well, and I'm we've got inches of ice out there, and I'm only worrying now about when spring comes if any of my perennials are going to come back after this. And
Oh,
but really, yeah, so many of my business metaphors are garden metaphors or animal life metaphors, because there's so much inspiration to be had just by witnessing life cycles. And we have an episode with Daniela Escudero, one of my best friends, where she came from the permaculture world and she now does biodynamic business design based off of sacred geometry and the permaculture models and biodynamics and how all of that comes together, and witnessing your business as a living organism. And that bridge is just so important, and going out into nature is the one of the absolute best ways to just tap out of the, concrete jungle, computer based work, or even just trapped in these four walls, and go out there and receive the sun and get tapped into the nature energy that there is. There, it's funny too, because so many notable, brilliant geniuses of throughout history, they attribute all of their big aha moments to going out on walks. There's so many people who, attribute their biggest breakthroughs from that. So I love that you mentioned that. And the metaphor that's available, witnessing a garden grow, is always so abundant.
and and also as well, it's about, again, regenerating hope. So when you're feeling low, I just always feel that when I've planted a tree or I've weeded a bed or whatever I've done out there, I look forward, as well as enjoying that moment. I also look forward to think like, oh, those duffs are just going to look amazing under that birch, or the crocus is going to look just beautiful under that lime tree or whatever. So yeah, I love as well the idea of the permaculture where everything starts with you
Yes,
and
zone
then
zero.
zones. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yes.
I think again, applying those permaculture principles to your life, you start here, and then once you've built, then you can start really expanding your world and your energy.
Absolutely.
You've got
Yeah.
everything you need here sorted first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, so like we could go on a whole other hour talking about that and getting maybe we'll come back on for another episode and talk about that. Maybe when the spring hits and we're both, got our hands deep in the dirt and we can come back with our garden metaphors, we can chat
Yeah,
about that. I would love
definitely.
that. Garden fairies coming together talking about massage and business. Now, coming back to massage for dementia, if you zoom out, big picture, how do
Mhm.
you see this kind of work contributing to the future of massage therapy, not just as a modality, but as a respected part of care teams and communities?
Well, I mean, I would like for and there's a big movement at the moment, isn't there, of becoming trauma informed,
Yeah.
yeah? And it's going off into places which, are, well, just all over the show, and some of it's got depth and some of it hasn't, let's face it. And I would like to see people talking about being dementia informed just as much. Now, there's a wonderful lady called Dr. Lisa Cherry who talks about the dilution of trauma informed. And of course, there's always that worry when something becomes that successful, it becomes diluted. And I would like for it to get to the stage where, that might happen. But again, like Lisa says, your trauma informed learning is never done,
Yeah.
neither is your dementia informed. So there are different people who have different reasons for coming on my course, for example. And every practitioner again is going to be very different. But for it to be talked about more widely, I think would be great because I think you've got people who want to make their practice more inclusive and they want to have the nuts and bolts to feel comfortable that should a person living with dementia come into their practice, they would have the basics, the foundational stuff to enable a context of safety and hold that space well. Then I think you've got people who are palliative, who work palliatively, and they might be working with people who are living with stroke, Parkinson's, cancer, as well as dementia and other diseases. So they have like an umbrella that's not quite as wide as the general practice, but they're still going to need to go quite deep to again hold that space well. And then there are people like Stephanie, who I quoted earlier, who make this their specialism. This is what sings to them. And this is what they want to do with their practice. So I think it depends on which way you kind of want to go. And I'm sure there are other ways as well that I can't think of right now. But I think those are the ways that practitioners can think about going, I think, in the first instance anyway. And I would just really love that our profession made our services available to people who, especially as their disease progresses, become more hidden. And I would like society not to assume that they might not want those services.
Yeah.
So I would want them to be offered genuinely to people as part and parcel of their wider care plan. So yeah, and I think when, going back to my strap line, when words escape us, touch says it all.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, well, here's to spreading the word and getting more and more eyes on this and ears on this. I know that this episode is going to be really, really impactful for our listeners. I'd love to ask if there's anything that you would like to leave our audience with today. Is there
Gosh.
any little nugget you'd like to share before we close out?
I I don't know. I suppose stay endlessly curious with people, with yourself, with your clients, and with your colleagues because, they provide you with support too.
Absolutely. Yeah, the curiousness. Perfect. If people are interested in taking your courses, where should they go learn more about you?
Well, you'll have to come to Britain, but you at the moment I only do consultations online. So, if people want to get in touch, then they can go to www.massagefordementia.co.uk. And if you live in the UK or you come to the UK, then there are courses sort of around Britain, but predominantly in Cornwall that they can book on. And well, I had something really exciting happen last year, actually. I had my first NHS training day where there was a very eclectic team of people who work in the community in Bristol. So we had nurses, speech and language therapists, physios. I think there was a social worker and support workers, and they all basically wanted to learn how to use touch-focused stuff to connect in a more meaningful way with their clients, but also show carers how to connect more meaningfully. And that includes in the nursing homes in their communities as well. So that was really exciting. And again, if there are organizations that want to get in touch, I'd be all ears.
Amazing. Oh, that's
Yeah.
incredible. Well, Nicolle, this has been such a lovely conversation. I'm going to circle back when it's springtime to have a garden fairy conversation, talk about our garden metaphors because that needs to happen. This has
Oh,
been
lovely.
absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Sustainable Body Worker. If something resonated for you today, grab your free breakthrough session, which includes a custom hypnotherapy track to help you unlock the next level. Grab it now with the link in the show notes. And to hear more, hit subscribe. We'll see you next time.